Hi, this is Lisa, and this is task number 4. We're going to be preparing our patient here for to be induced under anesthesia. So we've been pre-oxygenating now for 5 minutes, and so we're good to go ahead and start the induction process. I have the patient's chart right here with our propofol. We're going to be inducing with propofol, injectable anesthesia here, and we're going to be the dose is 8 mg per kg, and so at 8 mg times her weight, which is 22.5, divided by 10, which is the strength of the propofol, that gives us 18 mils, which we have here. I have it already all drawn up. And so I'm just going to make sure that there's no air in the syringe, which there isn't. So we're all good to go there. I'm just going to flush the catheter out with some heparinized saline to make sure it's patent. Which we're good. So I'm just going to check my area one more time and make sure that we have everything all ready before we start this process. Our anesthesia machine's all set up and ready to go. We have all of our monitoring devices. She's on a warming device here. We have our trach tubes right here, ready to go, and our laryngoscope. And so we are all good to go with the induction process. So I'm going to go ahead and start administering the propofol. And we're not going to give the whole 18 mils, we're just going to titrate it to effect. So we want to give this slowly, but not too slow, because we want to get them through that excitement phase smoothly. So I'm just going to see if this is good enough to intubate her on. We'll check her jaw tone. It's still a little tight, so I'm just going to give a little bit more. We'll put the oxygen back on.
Nothing has changed there. Nothing with eating has changed. Nothing with eating has changed. What about her weight?
Flush it through. Check her again. It's way more relaxed now, so we are good to go on intubating. So I'm visualizing her I'm pushing her epiglottis down, soft palate up, visualizing her trachea, and placing the tube straight down into the trachea. I'll go ahead and tie this. We'll go ahead and hook her up to oxygen. And we'll go ahead and inflate the cuff. We'll inflate it until there's 20 centimeters of water pressure, and until we don't hear the leak.
Is their nose fit? How is my not working? Oh, okay. Oh, Laurel. Yep. I have a squeeze in here. Patient's in the car.
Okay, so that's inflated properly. And I am verifying that the trach tube is in because I visualized it go straight into the trachea. And it's fogging up really nicely, so I know that she's breathing through it. And also I could see these little valves moving up and down, so I know every time she's taking a breath, it's pushing air through here, so that way I know it's inside the trachea.
We've never seen them before, but
So I'm just gonna do a check of her heart rate and her breathing after I turn on the isoflurane. And she doesn't have a palpebral reflex, so I know she's pretty under in her anesthesia. So I'm gonna turn it to like 1.5. Give her a quick breath, and then I'm gonna check her heart rate and her breathing. So we're at about 60 right now, which is at the probably the most bottom range that you want to get to for the heart rate. So now I'm going to start hooking up my monitoring devices. And we'll just give her a quick breath here. Okay, I can see that she's breathing through little valves. I'm going to put some lube in her eyes and then get her all hooked up to everything. So right now I'm hooking her up to her ECG, which is going to tell us if there's any arrhythmias with the heart.
yes.
I calculated also her oxygen flow rate. It was at I did 40 milliliters per kg, and that came out to 900. So she's almost at a liter of oxygen. So I'm just going to go ahead and put alcohol on these leads. I'm going to hook her up to her SpO2, which measures the saturation of oxygen in the hemoglobin.
Yeah, I'll pop her back in and then do the discharge.
I'm going to hook her up to her capnograph, which measures her expired carbon dioxide. That attaches between the trach tube and the breathing tubes. And I'm going to place an esophageal stethoscope. This way we can hear the heart rate better through these. Now her palpebral reflex has returned, so I'm just going to go ahead and turn this back up so that she can get more deeply anesthetized. Okay, so now I can hear the heart perfectly here. So now we're gonna hook up our blood pressure cuff. This is a good indicator of tissue perfusion, making sure that our organs and tissues are adequately perfused with oxygen and blood. Is it okay? Okay. Tongue is slippery. Okay, so now I'm just going to make sure that everything's functioning properly. She's still breathing great. She still has a little bit of palpebral, so we'll probably wait a little bit until she gets properly anesthetized before we start anything. Her SpO2 monitor is working great. It's at 98%, so that's good. So that means that's working. Our ECG is working a nice PQRS complex and giving us a, let's see here. Okay, and it doesn't look like there's any arrhythmias or anything, so it's a steady PQRS complex waveform going. Our blood pressure is working properly. It's reading at 103/52, so that's working well. Our capnograph is working great. It has a nice waveform on it. It is reading 0 on inspiration and then going up to 35 on expiration, so that's working perfectly. And so I believe we're ready to get going on our procedure here. Let me just put a blanket on her. And put on her connector to her fluids. And then we can get going on everything. Her fluid rate is going to be 225. Okay, so that's going. Just going to give her another breath here, not exceeding 20 centimeters of water pressure. And I'll start recording all of these values that I'm seeing here. I'll put her gas at 2. Her oxygen is at 1 liter. Her blood pressure is at 103/52. Can it see me right here, or should I get over there? Okay. Her MAP is 73. And her respiratory rate is so 1. So her respiratory rate is at 12. And then her heart rate, I'll record that. It's at 72. Just give her a little breath here again. Her palpebral's starting to diminish. Her jaw tone is relaxed, but not too relaxed. CRT's at 1. Everything's nice and pink. Okay, so we're all good to go to start on our procedure here. So we'll get going on that, and I'll record while she's doing the dental on this patient. I need to monitor while you're doing it,
How long do I go for?
like 5 minutes.
Okay. Are we good to go?
Yep, so we're all good to go. I'm just gonna watch her parameters closely here. And then while she's doing that, I can discuss different parts of the monitoring parameters. So again, the capnograph, that's for measuring expired CO2 on the patient. And the normal values for that are 0 on inspiration and about 35 to 45 on expiration. The heart rate, that's to measure circulation with the patient. We want to make sure that the heart is pumping at a fast enough rate to perfuse the tissues with oxygen. And so an adequate heart rate for a dog is about 60 to 120. And a cat, it's about 120 to 180, so any values below or above that should be reported to the veterinarian. Our respiratory rate, that's going to tell us how much they're breathing in the oxygen that they need. We want to make sure that it doesn't fall below a rate of 8. If it does, then at that point you want to report that to the veterinarian.
Yeah.
And our ECG, like I mentioned earlier, that's going to tell us if there's any arrhythmias within the heart. We want to make sure that the heart is pumping effectively, because if it's not, then the blood isn't being pumped throughout the body the way that it should be, and then so the tissues aren't getting the oxygen that they need. So with the ECG, that'll tell us if there's any arrhythmias. And I'm just going to record the values real fast and then come back to discussing this. So our blood pressure now is at 98 over 40. Our MAP is 67. SpO2 is at 98, which is perfect. ECG still looks great. Nice PQRS complex waveform. End-tidal CO2 still looks great. Nice waveform. It's not exceeding 45. And it's not below 35, so we're good there. I'm going to listen to the heart rate.
When you're done getting blood off that, Laura, there's Meredith right here.
Okay, we're still at about 72, so I'm going to go ahead and record that.
Yeah.
And then our respiratory rate. It's still at about 12. I am going to readjust her SpO2 because it's reading at 84 right now, but it's probably because she's in the mouth and moving things around, so I'm just going to move that. to another area of the body, probably her foot. I'm just going to go ahead and feel her pulse, the pulse quality. Which is very strong. So everything right now is telling me that everything is good with this patient. She's not too deeply anesthetized because her heart rate is still good. She's breathing at a adequate rate. Her ECG is all normal. Her SpO2 after I put it on the foot, it read back up to 98. So we're good there. And everything looks great, so I'm just going to give her a quick breath. I'm going to close the pop-off valve and squeeze the bag. Not let it exceed 20 centimeters of water pressure like I mentioned earlier. And with her blood pressure, we don't want the map to fall below 60. If we see a value below that, then we want to let the veterinarian know. And with the blood pressure, like I mentioned earlier, that helps to let us know that there's adequate tissue perfusion. Alright, so we'll come back and when we're close to the end of our procedure, and then we'll start disconnecting her and bringing down her isoflurane levels.